We have some fresh news from Kia. They just unveiled the 2025 Kia Sorento facelift. We haven't even got information about the 2024 model year yet, so they are way ahead in their planning for their new cars. And I think this is a very nice little facelift. So what we're going to do in this video is have a look at this design and what's different from the 2023 model year from a front and rear view, and also the interior. Interior is where the biggest changes happen. I don't have a side view for this yet, which is very annoying because I want to have a side view as well, but I don't think there are a lot of changes in the side view itself. So first of all, let's see what Car and Driver has to say about this. I'm going to link this article down in the description if you want to go and check it out. So the midsize SUV looks a bit fresher than before and has a larger infotainment screen. Seems to be the trend these days. Just make them bigger. Not sure how you're gonna integrate it, but I think Kia did a decent job integrating this screen. I'm not entirely sure if it's bigger. We're gonna have a look at that in just a second, but we don't expect its gas hybrid and plug-in hybrid powertrains to change much, which is great. Kia told Car and Driver that the 2024 Sorento would be a carryover model, so we expect to see this new Sorento arriving in the US as the 2025 model year. Inside, the biggest change is the new set of screens for the digital gauge cluster and the central infotainment system. The center screen appears to be running Kia's newer infotainment software, and the digital gauge cluster looks larger right here, which I'm not entirely sure that it actually is larger. The integration is new, but the screen size looks pretty much the same. So it looks larger than the unit that's currently available on the Sorento's higher trim levels. There's also a touch bar lower down on the dash that looks similar to the one in the Sportage and the EV6 that can be switched between the climate control settings and the navigation controls. You can see that here. Beautifully done, Kia. This is what we want, some physical knobs and buttons down here for the major functions. We don't expect any major changes to the Sorento's powertrain, which include a 2.5 liter gasoline engine in both naturally aspirated and turbocharged forms, a 227 horsepower hybrid setup, and a 261 horsepower plug-in hybrid option. And this is what I just said. Kia has yet to release the 2024 model year information yet, so it seems that the 2024 Sorento will have a short run before the updated 2025 model starts to arrive in the showroom. So very cool update by Kia for the Sorento. I do love what Kia is doing. We have the new Santa Fe looking nuts in a good way, and then we have the Kias, Kia in Hyundai right now still just killing it with their design, car designs for pretty much every single model that comes out. So let's have a look at the front view and what's new here for the 2025 model year Sorento. I feel like cars are just being replaced and updated so fast. It might be that I'm getting older and time just moves faster, but I feel like the Sorento just came out and now we have already a facelift for it. I always thought that this generation of the Sorento just looks very nice. It has this proper Kia design to it. The first thing I want to see when I see a new Kia model is this. Where is the Tiger nose? Where is it? We got to figure it out as soon as we look at a new Kia model. So let's have a look at the new one and see where exactly the Tiger nose is in this design. You can see that it got a little bit less obvious in the front end of the new one, but we do have it here. We have this upswing in the middle section going down, and then we have this black trim at the top part, creating what is known as the Tiger nose for the Kia, looking very nice and super clean. They sort of cleaned up specifically the lower section. This bumper, everything is a lot more structured and clean in the new design, and they obviously took a lot of inspiration from the EV9. I'm going to show you that right next to this in just a second. But as you can see in the old one, the daytime running lights here, I did a in-person review of the Sorento recently. I'm gonna link that down in the description on the Sketch Monkey channel if you want to go and check that out. What I said in that video is that this looks good, these daytime running lights of the old one, but they're pretty static because they have the same thickness going all around here into the bottom. But the new one, they added this more almost robotic feel to the daytime running lights. At the same time, they add a little bit of dynamic feeling to it, because look at this. This is very thin here in the middle, and then it goes into a bit of a thicker piece down here at the bottom. And you also have this curvature following the body line, so you have the shoulder line now right here going into the graphics in the front end, looking nice. And we have this piece being a little thicker And also, last but not least, this section over here, it just becomes thicker at the very end points of the LEDs. It just makes for a more interesting LED or daytime light to look at, and it adds some of that dynamic feeling to it. We also have this beautiful chamfer at the bottom that we don't have in the pre-face. So you can see up here, there's no real chamfer housing or creating a foundation for the headlights. I do like that they implemented that right here in the new 2025 Sorento. Further down, you see we have the fog lights all the way down here. This looks to be completely open, this grille, and we also have another opening down here at the bottom. This also looks to be functional, so it feels like we don't have any fakeness in the front end of the new Sorento, which is just fantastic. Overall, I think it's a super clean front end design. You can clearly see that it takes a lot of inspiration from the EV9 over here, specifically with the daytime run lights like this. Thankfully, we don't have a full light bar in the front end because I think that's a little overplayed now. A lot of companies are doing that, so just keep it like this. Make it a little bit more unique with the new with the new Sorento, just like they did with this design. So let's have a look at the rear view, because there's a couple of small changes here that I do really like. This is a proper facelift, meaning that they focused a lot more on the front end of the design. But one detail that I wasn't really a fan of in the old Sorento, if you look at the bumper here, it's the same feeling that we have in the front end. There's a lot going on, a lot of complexities going on with this trim piece, black piece going around here. Then you have this sharp edge right in the middle with some more curvatures down here at the bottom, and that's what they cleaned up in the facelift. I feel like they did exactly the same type of vibe in the rear end, because I was never a fan of this diaper that sits back here. It's in a different color than the rest of the diffuser, feeling a little out of place and just adds more complexity to this design. We have a version of this in the new one, as you can see, but we don't have these fake exhaust pipes because it feels like this is trying to not have the exhaust pipes visible, but we still want to have them be sort of integrated in some way, the graphics for the exhaust pipes, and that's what happened right here. And we also have this piece that I believe is not functional, and they removed all this in the new one. So you can see that we still have sort of a diffuser diaper down here, which is totally fine. I would much rather have this be black. You have the reverse lights sitting all the way down here. And look at this taillight. You have the same outline for it as we have in the previous, or the current, actually, generation of the Sorento. But what they did is they did the same thing to the LEDs as they did in the front end. So we have a little bit more of a dynamic feeling in these taillights and the LEDs with exactly the same philosophy that we have in the front. So make the endpoints a bit thicker than the rest of the LED. And now we also have a connection between these two bars that we didn't really have in the current generation. You can see that there is separation here with the body color, and now you have a connection with this LED up top, and also this more dynamic feeling in the overall internal pieces of the LED itself. And that's pretty much all the changes that I can see between these two. And honestly, those are all the changes that I want in the Sorento. To me, this is still a very fresh, very good looking design. I love this chamfer piece that we have here and all these angles that we have in the rear end with a lot of horizontal lines that stretches from one end to the other, creating a more wide looking, more premium looking design. You can also see that we do have the new Kia logo, obviously, in the 2025 model year. We also have new style of wheels. Not sure which wheel style I prefer here. These are, of course, going darker black in this case. These old ones also looked good. I actually really like the black wheels on the Kia Sorento in the one that I reviewed. I think they suit this car overall, specifically when everything else is blacked out. For example, the trim piece that goes around the window. But you can see the side view here. There's not a lot of changes, as you can see, to the side view. I think the side view is pretty much exactly the same as it is right now in the 2025 model year as well. So there's not a lot of changes in the side, which is totally fine. The biggest changes happened here, right here in the interior. And I'm not really sure I prefer the new 2025 model year and the facelift of this interior, because as you can see, we do have sort of a gauge cluster housing up here. This is a very interesting integration of a housing for a gauge cluster because the screen dips down and goes all the way in here and then comes back up in the infotainment screen, but it is within the same piece. So you can see just how it bends inwards right here. So you do have the gauges sitting further deeper in the dash than the infotainment screen, and on top of that you do have this cap, so you have zero glare in the infotainment screen itself. And we also have some very nice styling here for the vents. I do like the setup here because we have the big vent up here, then you have these small vents that's gonna blow on your kneecaps while you're driving. So you have two different angles where you want the air to come out from. It's really cool. And of course you do have the physical buttons and the toggles right here for the climate control temperature. Super clean interior with a bunch of different textures and materials. Again, making Kia feel premium. The last decade or so, Kia has just stepped it up big time when it comes to both the exterior design, last but not least, the interiors as well. And I think that continues in the 2025 model. Just have a look at this beautiful pattern that we have on the side. This is not wood anymore like I think it was. You have the wood piece right here. Now it's more metal feel with this pattern in it. Still, again, adding some premium feel to it. And the same thing here like it is with the exterior. They just cleaned stuff up, but the functionality is still pretty much the same as we have in the current pre-facelift version. We still have tactile buttons or touch buttons for the most important settings being static at all times. However, look at the integration of the gauge cluster here. It's just a big screen that sits on top of the dash, and we lose this depth of the gauge cluster. It doesn't sit as deep as it does in the 2023 model year up there, and we don't have a cap for it either. So in that regard, I'm not sure which one I prefer here. But if we look at just the centerpiece, I definitely prefer the new one because it is a lot more cleaner, and I do like this line of vents that now stretches across the entire width of the dash itself. But we do lose the kneecap vents that used to sit down here, as you can see in the current version. Great refresh overall by Kia for the 2025 Sorento, and it feels like they're starting to find their new identity here because, as I showed you, this looks a lot like the EV9. So it feels like they're starting to figure out in what direction they want to go, and I definitely look forward to seeing this in person once it reaches dealers in 2025.